Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. You daily dive into the news. It is Wednesday, and there's a lot to talk about, starting with this. Jimmy Kimmel is back.
I'm not sure who had a weirder 48 hours, me or the CEO of Tylenol.
And before we jump into this, you've got some people giving Joe Rogan some credit because before we actually knew that Kimmel was coming back, he predicted.
My suspicion is they suspended for a short amount of time. He comes back to a standing ovation. Donald Trump tweets mean shit about him, and then the world moves on.
And that is exactly what happened, minus the moving on part. Because you had Trump posting on Truth Social last night. I can't believe ABC fake news gave Jimmy Kimmel his job back. The White House was told by ABC that his show was canceled. Something happened between then and now because his audience is gone and his talent was never there. Why would they want someone back who does so poorly, who's not funny, and who puts the network in jeopardy by playing 99% positive Democrat garbage? He is yet another arm of the DNC, and to the best of my knowledge, that would be a major illegal campaign contribution. I think we're going to test ABC out on this. Let's see how we do. Last time I went after them, they gave me $16 million. This one sounds even more lucrative. A true bunch of losers. Let Jimmy Kimmel rot in his bad ratings. Who could have ever guessed that these settlements would embolden Trump? He said, oozing of sarcasm. Also really quick, and to be clear, this is my opinion. It's so funny that there have been so many Trump defenders saying, hey, this is a private company that made a private company decision. This wasn't because of the government, despite all the evidence that the government was pressuring things to happen. And Donald Trump, as he almost always does, is like, no. I'm going after him. Trump's like, don't try to steal the credit, and then just rinse, repeat. But again, that's my opinion. Newscat back on. While Trump was seemingly stewing in his own resentment, Kimmel, he returned last night to a standing ovation, where he delivered what felt like a historic, nearly 30-minute monologue that I feel like is going to go down in late-night television history.
Anyway, as I was saying before I was interrupted,
Though, I will say, if you watch TV offline, there were a long list of cities, including DC, New Orleans, Richmond, Columbus, Portland, Seattle, St. Louis, Salt Lake City, Nashville, and much upstate New York that could not watch it live. Right, and that's because the broadcasters Sinclair and Nexstar refused to air the episode on nearly 70 ABC affiliate stations that they own. But of course, you could also still watch the monologue on YouTube, where, as of recording, it's racked up nearly 14 million views in about 14 hours. Which also, to put that into some context, his political monologues, they typically get like a couple of million views. And I mean, the one that got him canceled last week, it only got around 4 million. So, we'll see how long that boost lasts, though obviously in the short term, it's possible that some people who didn't even tune in before are Kimmel fans now. But going into the monologue, you had Kimmel thanking all the people who expressed support for him during the past week, naming a long list of fellow talk show hosts. But then he also added names that were less expected.
I want to thank the people who don't support my show and what I believe, but support my right to share those beliefs anyway. Like Ben Shapiro, Clay Travis, Candace Owens, Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, even my old pal Ted Cruz.
With Kimmel saying that even though he disagrees with them on most things, and some of what they say, it makes him want to vomit, speaking out against this White House, it takes courage and they deserve credit for it. Kimmel also had some very kind words for Erica Kirk, who forgave the man who murdered her husband.
On the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." That man, that young man, I forgive him.
Renewed Kimmel just breaking up, talking about that moment.
You believe in the teachings of Jesus as I do. There it was. That's it. A selfless act of grace, forgiveness from a grieving widow. It touched me deeply. And I hope it touches many. And if there's anything we should take from this tragedy to carry forward, I hope it can be that.
But that also wasn't the only moment where he showed vulnerability, because he also commented on the small segment that apparently got him canceled last week.
But I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human, and that is, you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it. I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make, but I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way.
But then, after addressing the controversy, Kimmel made sure to stress, that none of this is actually about him. It's really about freedom of speech.
This show is not important. What is important is that we get to live in a country that allows us to have a show like this.
So Kimmel's saying that he's heard from comedians and talk show hosts from Russia and the Middle East who said that they'd get thrown in prison or worse for making fun of those in power. And he added that, he took his own freedom to speak his mind for granted. But now the government's going after not just him and Colbert, but also Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers. And so Kimmel calling that crazy, un-American, and a direct violation of the First Amendment, as well as hypocritical.
There was an FCC commissioner back in 2022 who worked under Joe Biden who was spot on. He wrote, "President Biden is right. Political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech. It challenges those in power while using humor to draw more people into the discussion. That's why people in influential positions have always targeted it for censorship." You know who wrote that? FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr, who later was appointed chairman of the FCC by this former crusader for free speech.
If we don't have free speech, then we just don't have a free country. It's as simple as that.
Right, and then, while making it clear that he strongly disagreed with their decision to pull him off the air, Kimmel commended Disney for putting him back on and saying that it put itself at risk of retaliation by doing so. Also, since last night, we've seen a variety of reactions to Kimmel's comeback. Right, some, like Ben Stiller, calling it brilliant, and others saying that pulling off this monologue was a feat in itself. Right, many saying that he did this kind of balancing act flawlessly, but also there were others with a very different opinion. Right, people like Andrew Colvett, Kirk's executive producer and a Turning Point USA spokesperson, writing, "Not good enough, Jimmy. It's simple. I'm sorry for saying the shooter was MAGA. He was not. He was of the left. I apologize to the Kirk family for lying. Please accept my sincere apology. I will do better. I was wrong." You also had conservative commentator Dana Loesch saying, "No apology. He wasn't making a joke. He outright lied about the killer because he hated the politics of the victim. Jimmy Kimmel can pound sand." But then also Piers Morgan, among others, honing in on the moments that Kimmel broke up, writing, "Hard to feel sympathy for Jimmy Kimmel and his crocodile tears, given how gleefully he has always gorged on the career entrails of conservative stars who lost their jobs like Tucker, Roseanne, etc." Right, well, there's no shortage of opinions here. Where I do want to end is with Joe Rogan, right? One of the biggest podcasters in the world. He's been heavily credited as being part of the reason why Donald Trump was elected. And while he hasn't reacted to this latest monologue yet, he did make his feelings about Kimmel's cancellation very clear in his most recent podcast episode.
First of all, I definitely don't think that the government should be involved ever in dictating what a comedian can or cannot say in a monologue. That's
Right.
crazy.
It's crazy.
And if people on the right are like, "Yeah, go get him," oh my God, you're crazy. You're crazy for supporting this. How you have time while you're running the world to be tweeting that you don't like talk show hosts?
Yeah.
That is so
crazy.
crazy.
So with all that, it's going to be very interesting to see whether Rogan, not to mention Ben Shapiro, Ted Cruz, and these other big names on the right keep up with their criticism of the White House as things unfold. Because remember, Trump promised to retaliate against Disney and ABC for this, and he doesn't seem like he's willing to give up the fight that easy. And of course, this is, he'd probably rather have a battle on this front and several others than have to deal with the Epstein scandal. And then there's more we've got to dive into today. But first, let me say, my old phone carrier thanked me for my loyalty by raising my bill, which, hey, come on, what? And so I dumped them and switched to today's sponsor, Mint Mobile. And right now, new customers can lock in 12 months of unlimited premium wireless for just $15 a month. That's talk, text, and data on the nation's largest 5G network with coverage for 98% of Americans. Plus, free calling to Canada, Mexico, and the UK, and 10 gigs of hotspot coverage on their unlimited plan, so you can scroll, stream, or work wherever without begging for Wi-Fi. And the best part, Mint made the whole thing easy and online. No stores, no salespeople, no hidden activation fees. You sign up, activate with eSIM and minutes, and keep your number. And I love that I can switch between two active lines on the same phone. It's super easy. And when I upgrade my phone, the eSIM transfer is a piece of cake. 96% of users rate their experience with Mint's customer care as highly satisfied. So if you're worried about service, no sweat. So hey, head to mintmobile.com/DeFranco and get this new customer offer for 12 months unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month. Again, that's mintmobile.com/DeFranco. Get it while it lasts. And then the fun part, upfront payment of $180 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time, new customer offer for first 12 months only. Speeds may slow, above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plans. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. But then next up in the news, let's talk about this Theo Von Pokemon Department of Homeland Security scandal. Because in 2025, every story just sounds like it's a Mad Lib. Because this whole thing, it kicked off earlier this week after DHS posted a now viral video on their socials that showed multiple dramatic ICE raids and arrests set to the original Pokemon theme song along with clips from the show. A clip that I'm not even gonna try to include in this video because the Pokemon company would probably sue me so hard that I'd probably have my fucking grandchildren paying the bill. But one, come on, you know the song. And two, to really hammer the point home, the video ends by flashing several mock versions of Pokemon trading cards, but instead of like Pikachu or Charizard, they featured mugshots of some of the migrants that ICE had arrested, with DHS then making sure to share those cards in separate posts so everyone could see the details in full, including descriptions of their alleged crimes, information on their arrests, and even their listed weakness as ICE. And then you had Customs and Border Protection replying to the post on X by sharing a gif of Detective Pikachu dancing and writing Border Patrol's newest recruit. And so then with that, you had a lot of conservative figures kind of applauding the post, high-fiving each other, though it also got a ton of backlash. And that is, you had many people wondering whether Nintendo and the Pokemon Company gave DHS permission to use its IP, especially as you had others noting that both of those companies are famously litigious, and many called on them to take legal action against the Trump administration. But also there, you had some arguing that the video falls under fair use protections. And as you'd expect, there's a lot of back and forth and debate here. But then the backlash got even bigger yesterday when a former chief legal officer for the Pokemon Company told IGN that he doesn't think that the company is going to go after DHS. Saying first, think of how little you see the Pokemon Company International's name in the press, saying they are insanely publicity shy and prefer to let the brand be the brand. And adding, second, many of their execs in the USA are on green cards. Even if I was still at the company, I wouldn't touch this, and I'm the most trigger-happy chief legal officer I've ever met. This will blow over in a couple of days, and they'll be happy to let it. Also, I'll say that article ended up getting community noted on X to clarify that it was the former chief legal officer who made those remarks after a lot of people just appear to think that it was an official response from the company. So that then brings us to this morning where you had the Pokemon Company responding to the DHS campaign with a spokesperson there telling the Daily Beast that they were aware of the video that DHS posted and adding, "Our company was not involved in the creation or distribution of this content, and permission was not granted for the use of our intellectual property." But very notably, the company declined to comment when asked if it intended to take legal action against the Trump administration. But as that plays out, it brings us to Theo Vaughn, who one was widely credited with helping Trump turn out young voters, but also two slammed DHS after it posted this video.
Heard you got deported, dude. Bye.
In the original clip of Theo, it was recorded back in January when a fan allegedly asked him to send a message to her boyfriend who couldn't come to his show because he had been deported, with that video being widely viewed as a joke. And so with this now government-released version, you had Theo Vaughn writing, "Yo, DHS, I didn't approve to be used in this. I know you know my address, so send a check, and please take this down, and please keep me out of your, quote, banger deportation videos. When it comes to immigration, my thoughts and heart are a lot more nuanced than this video allows. Bye." With Theo then also responding to another comment that applauded him for speaking up, saying, "It's crazy to me that they would think this is okay. What if someone attacks me tomorrow because they think I'm some final boss of deportations or something?" Now also with this, while Theo didn't specifically say what his views on immigration are and how they differ from the Trump administration's actions, you did have some pointing to comments that he made on the topic during an episode of his podcast back in June.
Obviously, there's a lot of deportations going on. It's sick when you see like children crying and people being taken from their parents. It's heartbreaking. Anybody thinks that that's heartbreaking. Now, there's also in the country, you have rules, you have laws, you have like, these are the rules, right? And some people are here, they're illegal. They're illegal by the letter of the law, technically. They're undocumented.
With Theo then going on to blame the Biden administration for letting a huge influx of illegal immigrants into the country and adding,
So, when Trump he's heavy-handed. That's who he is, right? We've also had a broken system for a long time. So when the hammer starts to come down, or the guillotine as this is, it's not going to be comfortable.
Then you also had Theo going on to say that he believes undeniably that there should be amnesty or a pathway to citizenship for people who are productive citizens. But then also, in addition to that, in regards to the DHS video, you had a similar kind of debate playing out about whether or not it was fair use. And there, you also had some arguing that it wasn't a huge leap for the Trump administration to think that Theo Vaughn would be okay with them using him to promote their message, writing things like, "But you did, in fact, say what's in that video. And you did, in fact, endorse Trump, basically. And you did, in fact, attend his inauguration, even though his entire campaign was deport everyone, so spare us." Though again, you had others pushing back on that, saying that it was a joke and that people should be allowed to change their minds when it comes to supporting Trump and his policies, which also is something that Theo Vaughn has actually done on several fronts recently. But literally, as I was filming the show, DHS deleted the video of Vaughn from X. Now, notably, it's unclear why the clip was taken down, right? Theo and DHS, they both haven't said anything about it as a recording, but it also appears that the Pokemon video is still up. Right? But with all that, whether it be the Pokemon stuff or the Theo Vaughn stuff, what are your thoughts and reactions here? But then next up in the news today, we need to talk about how the Dallas ICE field field office got shot up this morning. And while this is all still developing in real time as I'm recording this, here's what we know. 3 people at the facility were hit. A tweet by local police confirmed that at least 1 victim had died on the scene and 2 others were taken to the hospital. And for a while, it was unclear if another died on the way or while there, because you had some outlets saying that 1 victim died and 2 were wounded, where others were saying it was a 2-1 split and they cited a DHS spokesperson. However, you had everyone agreeing that the killer also made sure that they weren't captured and is no longer alive. The authorities are also saying it looks like it was a sniper-style attack, meaning that the shooter was a few hundred yards away. Also, as of recording this, we know very little about the shooter. So just as I was finishing up today's show for you, the authorities released his name and age. And while this is still developing, you already have people online digging into his history, into his politics. Which on that note, since it's so early on, we're going to wait for more information to come in, or we don't want to accidentally feed one narrative or another, especially when it was clear after Kirk's death that people were willing to just run or even make information up to support their claims. Right, considering that it was an attack on an ICE facility, you'd assume that obviously the shooting was anti-ICE in nature and that the victims were members of ICE. However, the initial reports from outlets are saying that all the victims were detainees. And you had the FBI itself kind of answering the confusion by saying,
"While we're not releasing identities of any victims at this time, what I can confirm for you is no members of law enforcement were hurt during this attack."
Also, at that same conference, you had the official adding,
"What I can also share with you is that early evidence that we've seen from rounds that were found near the suspected shooter contain messages that are anti-ICE in nature."
You then had FBI Director Kash Patel backing that up with a photo allegedly from a scene showing a stripper clip of large caliber bullets with one that says anti-ICE. With him also writing, "These despicable politically motivated attacks against law enforcement are not a one-off. It has to end, and the FBI and our partners will lead these investigative efforts to see to it that those who target our law enforcement are pursued and brought to the fullest extent of justice." Now, considering Patel's history of jumping the gun, you have a lot of people kind of doubting the photo was legit, but it at least lines up with what local agents are saying. Now, also at the news conference, you had Senator Ted Cruz pleading for political violence to stop. You also had Vice President J.D. Vance similarly calling for an end to violence towards law enforcement, writing, "The obsessive attack on law enforcement, particularly ICE, must stop. I'm praying for everyone hurt in this attack and for their families." So there you had people noting that Vance's post was actually shortly after the attack, which some found to be an issue because at the time it was really unclear who was being targeted. Right, an ICE facility was shot, but detainees were the victims. And that it led to questions about how Vance could push a narrative when evidence at the time didn't seem conclusive in any direction. However, you've had Vance coming out swinging against people who have criticized him, such as replying to one with, "The gunman had anti-ICE messaging carved on the bullets he used. What precisely did I get wrong, dipshit?" And then with that, you had a number of people saying, it's entirely plausible that since the shots were from a few hundred yards away and the victims describing many shots being fired, accuracy might not have been the biggest concern and detainees weren't the intended targets. And actually, on that note, you had law enforcement saying that the shooter just fired indiscriminately into the building, indicating that there really wasn't much thought being put into who could be hit. Right, but all of this is, this is not an isolated incident in Texas. This is now the 3rd time this year that an immigration facility has been targeted. Right, 2 others were hit back in July. And then you couple that with things like the assassinations of Melissa Hortman and Charlie Kirk, and it feels scary. And so for now, where I'll leave this is, of course, we'll have to wait to see what else we learn. This is still a developing situation. But ultimately, that is where we are right now. Obviously, we have to keep our eyes on this because, again, to stress, this is a developing situation. We have to see what else we can learn, especially because, you always see conflicting reports in the immediate aftermath of something. But for now, of course, I would love to know your thoughts and reactions to not only what's happened, but the dissemination of information and the reactions afterwards. And then, there's more we've got to talk about in a minute. But first, let me say, you ever bite into a protein bar and you wonder if the wrapper would have tasted better? Well, that is why today's sponsor, Equip Foods, made the Prime Bar, the first ever grass-fed beef superfood bar. And they're just now restocked because, people actually want to eat these. 20 grams of pasture-raised protein from grass-fed beef and collagen. 0 whey, 0 soy, 0 weird fillers made in a mad scientist basement. Just honest, real food that fuels instead of fakes. And gut health, take care of it with colostrum, nature's complete food for recovery and immunity. Fats, you're talking grass-fed tallow and cocoa butter. Sweetness, dates and honey, translation, no sugar crash. And Equip backs it all up with transparency, like every ingredient tested for pesticides, heavy metals, and microplastics. I use Prime bars as road trip fuel, post-workout recovery, and when I just want a snack that doesn't hate me. And also, I'll say peanut butter lovers, they just dropped a new peanut butter Prime bar that somehow tastes like dessert and fuel at the same time. Clean, simple, delicious. The Prime bar just sets the bar. So hey, grab yours by scanning the QR code or go to equipfoods.com/Phil and use code Phil for 20% off your first order or 35% off your first subscription. But definitely don't wait. Prime bars, they vanish faster than your starting Monday diet. But then next up today, let's talk about the Donald Trump broken escalator situation. Because when Trump arrived at the UN yesterday, he and the First Lady went to step on the escalator and boom, it froze. Of course, as Mitch Hedberg pointed out back in the day, an escalator can't break. It just can become stairs. And so they just ended up walking up, though It outraged a lot of people, including Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who wrote, "If someone at the UN intentionally stopped the escalator as the president and first lady were stepping on, they need to be fired and investigated immediately." They're then sharing a screenshot from a UK newspaper claiming that UN staff members had previously joked about turning the escalator off on him and saying they ran out of money. With that said, reportedly right now, there's no evidence supporting that they actually did this. But still, Leavitt had more shit to talk about with this escalator, as well as the teleprompter glitch that Trump dealt with during his speech.
First, it was the escalator, then it was the teleprompter, and then Katie Pavlich from Town Hall, who we offered a seat in the press pool to cover the president's historic speech today, noticed that the audio inside of the room was much lower and different for the president of the United States than the previous speaker. So when you put all of this together, it doesn't look like a coincidence to me. And I know that we have people, including the United States Secret Service, who are looking into this to try to get to the bottom of it. And if we find that these were UN staffers who were purposefully trying to literally trip up the president and the first lady of the United States, well, there better be accountability for those people.
Right, and Leavitt was not alone here, especially with the Fox News crowd.
They sabotaged him.
Yeah.
And they could have hurt the first lady.
Yeah.
Trump would have fallen and he would have gotten back up. I mean, this is an insurrection. And what we need to do is either leave the UN or we need to bomb it. It is in New York, though, right?
Yeah,
there could be some fallout there.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Maybe gas it?
No.
Let's not do
Don't
that.
gas it. Okay. But we need to destroy it. Maybe just, can we demolish the building? No, this is absolutely unacceptable, and I hope they get to the bottom of it.
And even though he was seemingly kidding about bombing the UN building, those comments, they sparked backlash online. Right? People arguing they were worthy of resignation, that on any other network, hosts would get punished for saying something like that. Now, for his part, Trump seemed annoyed, but not as angry as other people. He made kind of passive-aggressive remarks about the UN mishaps during his speech.
I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle, and then a teleprompter that didn't work.
Though then on Truth Social, he wrote that those events probably made the speech more interesting. And then as far as what actually happened, right, why did the escalator stop? Well, the UN, they looked into it, and in a Knives Out plot twist, they found that the culprit may have actually been close to Trump's circle and acted in plain sight. Or with a statement pointing to a videographer who was filming the US delegation because he got on the escalator right before Trump and Melania, and they explained, a subsequent investigation, including a readout of the machine's central processing unit, indicated that the escalator had stopped after a built-in safety mechanism on the comb step was triggered at the top of the escalator. The safety mechanism is designed to prevent people or objects accidentally being caught and stuck in or pulled into the gearing. The videographer may have inadvertently triggered the safety function. And if you look at the video of the whole thing, you can see a videographer filming them. You can't see his feet or what he's stepping on, but he was walking backwards rather quickly. Right? And then as far as the teleprompter error, you had the UN telling CBS News that the White House was actually operating the prompter. And so for now, that is where we are, though apparently there's a Secret Service investigation that we get to look forward to. But then next up in the news, I guess forget about a peace deal. Donald Trump is now saying that Ukraine can win the war, take back the territory it's lost, and maybe even get a little extra. After getting to know and fully understand the Ukraine-Russia military and economic situation, and after seeing the economic trouble it is causing Russia, I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form. Russia has been fighting aimlessly for 3.5 years, a war that should have taken a real military power less than a week to win. This is not distinguishing Russia. And adding, Ukraine would be able to take back their country in its original form, and who knows, maybe even go further than that. Putin and Russia are in big economic trouble, and this is the time for Ukraine to act. So one, I gotta say that the standout is the whole real military power thing. He essentially said Putin and Russia are bitch-made. Though of course, too, the bigger and probably more important thing is this is a complete 180 from just a few weeks ago. Or with Trump rolling out the red carpet for Putin in Alaska, and Trump coming out of that meeting and saying that Ukraine would have to face reality and make a deal that involved giving up some of its territory. And so now it's not clear why Trump has apparently had this change of heart, how long it'll last, and what it really means. Right? Because there are signs that the Russian economy is starting to really feel it, but the situation on the ground, it remains fundamentally unchanged. And you've got people like a senior NATO military officer pointing out that Ukraine wasn't even able to gain ground when American aid to the country was at a peak. Plus, it's not like Trump's offering to bring back American military aid, though I will say, notably, he seemed to reaffirm his commitment to a relatively new arrangement that involves NATO members buying US-made weapons on behalf of Ukraine, with Trump saying we will continue to supply weapons to NATO for NATO to do what they want with them. Right? And then with all that, you had a lot of people pointing to what was not in Trump's post, and that is any mention of diplomatic effort to end the war, leaving the world wondering if he's deciding to step away. And also, I'll say a big thing with this is it seems like it's more than possible that Trump blindsided even his own administration with his post. Because just a short time after, you had Marco Rubio seeming to contradict Trump, saying that the war in Ukraine cannot cannot end militarily and will end at the negotiating table. And that also is Rubio seemed to be at odds with Trump on the issue of Russian incursions into NATO airspace. And I mean, that's been an ongoing issue, but it's also really heated up in the past few weeks. Right, earlier this month, NATO forces shot down Russian drones that crossed into Poland, which Trump at the time suggested may have actually been a mistake. And then last week, Russian fighter jets flew over Estonian airspace for 12 minutes. And then on Monday, airports in Norway and Denmark were forced to close for several hours due to drone sightings. And you had the Danish PM saying that Russian involvement couldn't be ruled out. Right, and then with all that, you had NATO issuing a statement yesterday saying that it would use all options to defend itself, with the Secretary General saying that the decision about whether to shoot down a Russian aircraft, it would just depend on the information. It's seemingly giving the green light. And then along with that, you had an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council on Monday that focused on this. And there you had the Polish foreign minister putting it even more bluntly, saying if another missile or aircraft enters our space without permission, deliberately or by mistake, and gets shot down and the wreckage falls on NATO territory, please don't come here to whine about it. You have been warned. But then notably there, you had Rubio arguing that NATO allies should not shoot down Russian planes unless they're attacking, but then only to have Trump say soon after that they should. Though I also have to add an asterisk to that, because when pressed by reporters to the extent of which you'd back up allies on this, you just had him saying it would depend on the circumstances. But then also a big thing to look at here is you had Trump meeting with Zelensky yesterday, and that meeting, it was described as constructive. And you had Zelensky responding to Trump's post that came afterwards saying,
"This post of Trump, it's a big shift. It's a big shift. It's very positive."
But again, I say this every week, if not every show, words are words and actions are actions, and we're gonna have to see what action actually happens. And that, I mean, on all fronts, though also in the form of increased economic pressure on Russia. Because with that, last week you had Trump publishing a letter accusing NATO member states of weakening its negotiating position by continuing to purchase Russian oil and gas. With Trump saying that the US would impose major sanctions on Russia, but only after NATO countries had stopped these purchases. Now, a big thing there is that could be something that's a challenge for countries like Hungary and Slovakia, refusing to find alternative suppliers. But regardless, it's a point he brought up in his speech yesterday at the UN, and a speech where I will say he also admitted that he thought that ending the war would be much easier because of his relationship with Putin. And then along with that, he claimed that the US is fully prepared to impose a very strong round of powerful tariffs, which he believes would stop the bloodshed very quickly, but only if European nations adopt the exact same measures. And so you don't have to see where that leads, but so far we do know that the European Commission is working on a new tariff proposal in response to the pressure from Trump. And it also proposed a 19th package of sanctions against Russia just a few days ago. But in the meantime, the war is still raging on, and we're only now learning more and more about some of the human rights violations that have taken place away from the battlefield. Right, just yesterday, you had the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine presenting findings that Russia has systematically tortured Ukrainian civilians in over 100 detention centers in every region of occupied territory, as well as dozens of regions inside the Russian Federation. And this report detailed abuses including mock execution, severe beatings and electric shocks, threats of death and violence to them or their loved ones, sexual violence, and the use of prolonged stress positions. Right, and the head of the mission said that her office has so far confirmed 36 deaths from torture, as well as poor conditions or lack of access to medical care. But of course, it brings us back where it always does, and that is words are words, actions are actions, and we're gonna have to see what happens next. But then finally today, I've got a congratulations and some commentary. Starting with a congrats to Riley T, SeatGeek's latest weekly winner, who just scored $500 in tickets and is gonna see Ariana Grande. And for the rest of y'all, that's right, SeatGeek is still giving away $500 in tickets weekly, and you should definitely enter today if you haven't already. I mean, you could be the next winner and snag $500 towards seeing your favorite artist, sporting event, or play. I mean, there's like over 70,000 events to choose from. Just add code DeFranco to your SeatGeek app profile for a chance at the weekly $500 prize, no purchase necessary. And yesterday, y'all's comments really focused on the Tylenol Trump situation, as well as lesser so with Kimmel. Though with that, I do want to start with Kimmel because there were a number of people that were kind of like torn between giving Disney credit and also saying, I don't know about them. I am personally on the, I don't trust them at this moment. I'm waiting to see what they do next, though I am mainly thinking if they don't do more, I'm of the mindset of fuck Bob Iger. And again, I'm waiting to see how things continue to play out. Right? Because I'm like, okay, yeah, Kimmel's back on the air, but I feel like Iger exposed himself as not being built for this moment if he doesn't do more from here. I mean, this country, it's become so filled with greedy fucks, cowardly fucks, and power-hungry fucks at the pinnacles of power, attention, and influence that I feel like the rest of us were just left hoping, hey, maybe we can make enough of a stink that they'll actually stand up to an aggressive, power-hungry narcissist who wants to be, but also clutches his pearls when you call him an authoritarian when he does authoritarian things. And, I mean, you've got guys like Stephen A. Smith out here giving what I think he thinks are motivational speeches about shutting the fuck up to survive a Trump presidency, all while it really feels like the only reason Disney put Kimmel back on the air is because enough of you said, go fuck yourself, Bob, and started canceling Disney Plus and Hulu subscriptions right as they were announcing a price increase. And then also top of mind is, yeah, I want people with audiences to speak up more. And I was happy to see what I saw, but especially if they were one of these like self-proclaimed free speech warriors, oh, you can't just say anything anymore, motherfuckers. But also at this time, I think it's more important than ever that if you're a small voice, a new voice, or you don't even have one yet, to speak up. You're actually freer, or at least can think of in a way that is freer than a lot of the people that I'm talking about. The people that are big in entertainment, whether it be social media space or mainstream, or the people that are at the top of these companies. Because we've got a world filled with haves that are scared of becoming the next have-not, and they're often more than willing to bend the knee and sell out your freedoms to pay for their yacht. They're not going to have a spine, and even if some of them do, the real power has to come from the groundswell of everyday people that shoots up. But that's my little mini rant there. And as far as the other comments, like I said, a lot of them, and it was the majority, were around Trump and Tylenol. Right, some saying Phil skipped over the whole purpose of the Trump autism grift, saying that the government told people to stop using Tylenol and instead buy a product sold by Dr. Oz. There, I'd say Oz has reportedly sold his shares and resigned from his positions in the company selling that product. But also that company said it sold out its in-house brand of the product yesterday, so who knows? And either way, while it feels like everything has at least a sheen of grift, if not being a complete grift, I do want to look more into the treatments that are being talked about, because I have seen a number of doctors that I do respect saying there is something there, but more studies need to be done. Though again, that's a comment on the leucovorin aspect of this and not the Tylenol situation. But I think that also brings us to one of the core issues that a lot of people have, and that is, what about the data? If you're cherry picking studies and the results, or even just parts of the study and ignoring other things, even other concerns, that's not science. But then also in those comments, some of y'all were joking, saying chugging an entire bottle of Tylenol to level up my autism stat. The Larixo also added in a follow-up reply, in all seriousness, this shit fucking sucks. This is basically the MMR vaccine scare, but with Tylenol. You also had some saying, as a man with autism, this is completely bonkers, saying my mother was allergic to Tylenol, so it was impossible for her to take it. The inmates are running the asylum. Right, and all of this, as many in the comments were just kind of blown away at, well, I'll just read the comment. The best part was Trump trying to pronounce acetaminophen.
Well, let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen.
With Itachi adding, if Biden tripped over a word, it would be front page news. Trump and RFK simultaneously sound like they're having a stroke and no one seems to care. And really with all this, I'm just kind of left wondering, what are the long and short-term impacts that we're gonna see with this? Would that be, what does a pregnant woman do moving forward when she has a fever while she's pregnant, which, like we talked about yesterday, that can be very concerning for the child. Right now that you have RFK Jr. and the president coming out and saying this. And then of course also all the other things that are being destroyed or touched on. What does that look like in 5, 10, 20 years? That, my friends, it brings us to the end of this video, though you have even more just a click away. We've got my brand new podcast with Ed Elson from Prof G Markets. And it was a really, really interesting conversation around just the US economy, the world's economy, and also just Gen Z. You can also have the newest Philip DeFranco show that you haven't seen yet right here. And I've even got links in the description for both of those on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, or really wherever else you want to get filled in. Main thing, thank you for watching. I love yo faces, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.